While the full extent of the financial, societal, and emotional impacts of the pandemic lockdown in 2020 will take years to fully understand, recent statistics have indicated that in the US, rates of depression and anxiety in that period almost quadrupled, with younger people being hit particularly hard. The following are 3 cases of people who were reported missing during lockdown and have yet to be found. June 26, 2020. Sandra Hughes. 54-year-old female Sandra Hughes was last seen on June 26, 2020 in the Sierra National Forest, north of Fresno, California. Hughes had been on a solo camping trip to escape COVID quarantines, flying from Hawaii to California in June. She drove to set up camp near Johnsen Meadows at Mugler Creek in Sierra National Forest. Did the freewheeling hiker run into physical trouble while alone in the wilderness? Or did she run into foul play? Several disturbing sightings, including one by a 3-year-old boy, have led investigators to believe Sandra Hughes may still be out there. Sandra had always lived an adventurous life, often moving around to different locations. So when she announced to family and friends she would be leaving Maui, after only living and working there a few months, to go explore the wilderness in California, it came as no surprise. The last time Sandra spoke with her family was on June 26th, when she had just arrived in California to begin her solo camping trip. By all accounts, Hughes was considered an accomplished camper and outdoors enthusiast. She had even trained to be a park ranger in college. What happened to Sandra between June 26 and the following several days have left investigators stumped and family and friends in shock. July 2nd. Hikers reported finding camping gear, such as a sleeping bag, strewn across the area known as Johnsen Meadow. 2 days later, on July 4th, another group of hikers who were visiting the park over the holiday weekend reported seeing a woman who matched Sandra's description walking through the forest. The woman was barefoot and appeared to have a bruise on her face. The hikers said they asked the woman if she needed any medical assistance, but the free-spirited camper, who they later identified as Sandra, refused any help and continued to go her own way. 1 day later, on July 5th, authorities located an abandoned campsite between Bear Sore and Minaret Road. There was no trace of Sandra or her car. After searching through the scattered campsite remnants, authorities were able to find several identifying documents which linked the site to Sandra. It was at this time authorities contacted her family. Although there was no sign of Sandra or foul play, her relatives and friends were surprised to hear about the state of Sandra's campsite, saying she was a very neat person who took her camping very seriously, and would be completely unlike her to have such a messy and disrupted campsite. A day later, on July 6th, investigators found Sandra's silver Saab near Chiquito Creek, over 5 miles north of her campsite. Investigators believe the vehicle had been traveling at a low rate of speed, around 20 to 30 miles per hour, when it collided with a tree and later rolled down into a ravine. It is believed that the car crashed at some point between July 2nd and July 4th. There was no reported evidence of foul play at the vehicle, or any evidence to indicate Sandra was even the driver. Over the next month, teams from 6 California counties took part in an extensive search and rescue operation, which included aerial searches performed by the California Air Guard. But there was still no sign of the solo camper. That would change on August 9th, when 2 hunters reported having seen a woman who resembled Sandra leaning against a tree on Forest Road 5501, also about 5 miles from her campsite near Portuguese Overlook in Busor. According to the hunters, the woman did not approach them or motion to them in any attempt to make contact. They also mentioned she did not appear to be in any type of distress. That evening, the hunters realized the woman they had seen in the forest was the same woman featured on a missing persons poster in the area. The hunters contacted law enforcement and reported the sighting, while also adding that the woman in the woods appeared to have lost weight and was much thinner than the photos of Sandra that were used on the poster. Although Sandra's belongings at both the campsite and car were thrown around in a way that appeared careless to investigators, there were no signs of foul play. It appeared Sandra had simply disappeared. But why? One theory was that Sandra had injured herself while hiking alone, a very common occurrence, and possibly hit her head or in some other way became impaired. Perhaps she was driving for help when she crashed the car, sending her disoriented and on foot into the woods. Authorities were unable to determine whether Sandra went missing before or after the crash of her car, or whether she was even driving at the time. It's also unclear where the disturbance of her campsite fits into the timeline. Was it before or after her car left the area? And once again, who was driving? Was Sandra responsible for the crash and the destruction of her campsite? Or was it someone else, or perhaps several other people? There's been no evidence that Sandra was with anyone else at her campsite. Even if the free-spirited hiker decided to just wander off the grid, why would she crash her car and scatter her belongings? Was it an attempt to veer investigators off target? In late July, another sighting of Sandra would surface, and this one would be a little haunted. The Gorba family from Southern California was traveling in their SUV through the Madera Mountains when one of their 3 children began to speak with someone who was not in the car. According to the family, the 3-year-old child was pointing to a spot in a nearby meadow where he claimed to see a woman wearing a black shirt with blue hair, laying face down on the ground with her legs straight up in the air. The child continued to tell his parents that the woman in the meadow couldn't talk to him because she was dead, but that she needed their help. After stopping to check out the meadow and finding nothing, the family was so unsettled they ended the day early and went home, and proceeded to do what anyone might do in this situation. They posted the experience on social media, asking if anyone had any idea who or what their son may have witnessed. Not long after posting, they would get an answer. An officer from the Madera County Sheriff's Office reached out to the couple and described the case of Sandra Hughes, who was last seen in the area where the young boy had seen the woman dressed in a black shirt, jeans, and blue hair, the same clothing that Sandra was believed to be wearing when she disappeared. Several days later, 2 officers accompanied the family to the meadow where their son claimed to have seen the woman laying face down. A thorough search of the area by investigators turned up nothing. Although it's impossible to say if what the young boy saw that day existed in the material world or not, the woman he described did bear an uncanny resemblance to Sandra. He was even able to identify her in 3 out of 4 photos he was shown by investigators. Skeptics have suggested the sighting may have been a publicity stunt by the family, but could it be possible the child had seen Sandra Hughes that day in the field, and that she was able to disappear by the time the family stopped their SUV, and was long gone by the time authorities arrived? Since the summer of 2020, there have been no further reported sightings of Sandra Hughes or her ghost. Sandra Hughes is known to be self-sufficient, a nature lover, and enjoys relocating her place of residence frequently. There are no suspects or persons of interest in Sandra's disappearance, but her case is still active and unsolved. Sandra Hughes is 5'3" and weighs about 150 pounds with brown eyes and shoulder-length brown hair. As was mentioned by a witness, she may have lost weight since the time of these pictures. Authorities are asking anyone with information on the whereabouts of Sandra Hughes to immediately contact the Madera County Sheriff's Office at 559-675-7770. December 21st, 2020. Dane Elkins. 21-year-old male Dane Elkins was last seen near Interstate 5 and Templin Highway near Castaic, California. The 23-time national racquetball champion was driving from his parents' home in the Southern California town of Brentwood, north to the college town of Santa Cruz. 2 unexplained calls to 911 on the evening of December 21st resulted in law enforcement finding Dane's abandoned vehicle on the side of the highway, with the young man who had been driving vanished from the area, never to be seen again. Or was he? For most of 2020, engineering student Dane Elkins had been attending college at UC Santa Cruz remotely while living at his parents' house in the Los Angeles area community of Brentwood. The temporary living situation wasn't easy for Dane, who not only missed his friends, but also missed playing on the university's racquetball team. Racquetball had always been a huge part of Dane's life, and he had racked up an impressive number of achievements all at a young age, including winning 23 national junior racquetball championships, with mentions in national media like Sports Illustrated. When he vanished, Dane continued to hold an international ranking among racquetball players. Dane's mother last reported seeing her son on December 15th before he hit the road to drive up to Santa Cruz and visit some friends, something he did often since he'd been home. The period of lockdown had been difficult for the young man. His family would later comment they believed the pressure he was feeling from college and what seemed like a never-ending pandemic could have contributed to his mental health challenges, even leading to paranoid episodes. 5 days later, on December 20th, Dane had spoken with a college friend earlier that day on his cell phone when the call cut out. The two were never able to connect. Later that evening, around 8:20 p.m., Dane made 2 unexplained calls to 911. When law enforcement arrived at the location, they found Dane's abandoned car still running and with deflated tires. Inside the car, they found his cell phone, laptop, and wallet. There was no indication of where Dane had gone, or if he was alone, on foot, or in another vehicle. Investigators were able to use a canine unit to detect Dane's scent, but unfortunately it vanished about 100 yards from his car. With no sign of foul play or eyewitness accounts, Dane's case confounded investigators. But within just a few months of his disappearance, there would begin a series of sightings which would put Dane at various locations across the West Coast. February 5th, 2021, Mojave, California. 2 witnesses reported speaking with Dane near the intersection of the 14 freeway and the Mojave-Barstow Highway, 50 miles north of Santa Clarita Valley. The 2 women stated they had bought Dane some food and listened to his story about traveling northbound on foot to Portland, Oregon, but didn't realize he was a missing person at the time. He was reported to be traveling with a backpack and a sleeping mat. The witnesses met the man they believe was Dane while reportedly selling cell phones, and it's unknown if Dane purchased a phone. Over the next several months, there would be additional unconfirmed sightings of a young man who matched Dane's description around Bakersfield, particularly around the Lake Isabella and Wilfred Height campground area, where allegedly Dane had used his name to register for a campsite. Was it really Dane? Or was it someone using his ID? The campground area had been a known destination for transients and those looking to live off the grid. The last credible sighting of Dane Elkins occurred almost 7 months after he was last seen, on July 12, 2021, 250 miles north from the campground in Oakdale, California. Dane was reportedly spotted at an AM/PM convenience store asking for spare change. According to the witnesses who interacted with Dane and later reported the news to his family, the young man said he was headed to Oregon and needed bus money. The witness also said the man he believes was Dane told him a woman named Aubrey had helped bring him to Oakdale. The next public update in Dane's case was a message from his family on the Searching for Dane Elkins Facebook page, dated 12/27/21. The message stated that multiple witnesses had communicated to the family that Dane was, quote, relatively safe and headed towards Oregon. It traced his story from abandoning the car on December 21st as the result of a paranoid state, his sighting in Mojave on February 5th, and July 12th when he was seen in Oakdale using his name and attempting to get to Oregon. The family later went on to write they had heard Dane was being helped by a female friend in Modesto, where several homeless people reported seeing him. Since that social media post in late December 2021, there has been no new publicly reported updates about Dane. His family is very encouraged by these sightings and are grateful for the kindness that strangers have shown to their son. Unfortunately for Dane's family, they have been unable to identify him in any of the photos of young men that have been submitted by concerned citizens, which raises the question, if the men in the photos aren't Dane, but just look like him, is it possible the eyewitness sightings of Dane were also not of him, just someone who looked like him? Despite his family's belief that Dane is in mental distress, Due to his age, law enforcement is unable to act on his missing person status, because technically, it's not illegal for an adult to go missing and to not contact their family. Further limiting their action, there's no evidence that the man witnesses reported meeting was a potential risk to himself or others, or that the man was even actually Dane Elkins. Is Dane a victim of his mental health, struggling to recover from a pandemic-induced psychotic episode? Or is there another story? Is Dane part of a generation that has embraced living on the margins, almost off the grid, camping in national parks and drifting from place to place, often only servicing to solicit for change and for food? Or is he a victim of foul play, possibly abducted after the 911 calls and the abandoned car, never even leaving the area on foot? Dane's family asks that anyone who believes they have seen their son, either in Oregon or anywhere else, to try and take a discreet photo of him from a distance without arousing his attention, as they are concerned about further triggering his mental state and paranoia. Dane Elkins is 5 feet 11 inches tall, 170 pounds, with brown hair and green eyes. Dane may have a beard, and he was last seen wearing a blue jacket. His family believes Dane could possibly be in several different locations over a very large geographic area. These include Santa Cruz, Salinas, San Jose, or somewhere else in between Northern California and Oregon, possibly at a campground or other transient gathering place. Dane's family remains confident that he is out there and are extremely grateful for any assistance from the public, particularly helping to spread the word on social media. If you have any information on the whereabouts of Dane Elkins, email or contact the LAPD or leave an anonymous tip at Crime Stoppers at 800-222-TIPS. September 30th, 2020. Sydney West. 19-year-old female Sydney West was last seen in San Francisco, California on September 30th, 2020. The college freshman had taken a pause from her classes at UC Berkeley to recover from a recent concussion. She was last seen at around 6:45 a.m. at San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge, but due to the fog and the smoke from recent wildfires, she was quickly lost on the bridge's security cameras. Apart from being a beautiful national landmark, the Golden Gate is also a bridge with a dark reputation, with recent statistics estimating that there is one attempted jumper almost every other day. Is Sydney's case another sad chapter in the history of the bridge by the bay? Or did Sydney fall victim to foul play, amnesia, or perhaps something more personal? Sydney West had grown up in Pleasanton, California, before relocating to North Carolina with her parents and younger sister sometime after 2017. She's described by her family as a sweet and goofy girl who had a strong love for the outdoors, animals, the environment, and music, playing piano and writing her own songs and lyrics. She often appeared at open mics around her new hometown in North Carolina. While in high school, Sydney developed another passion, for volleyball, where she excelled on her school's team both in California and North Carolina, where she was a varsity co-captain. After graduating in 2019, Sydney decided to take a gap year and journeyed across the globe to Australia. It was during that time she began to post blogs where she described her personal struggle with depression and anxiety, and the pressures she felt in her life. In the fall of 2020, Sydney moved to the Bay Area to begin her freshman year at UC Berkeley. Unfortunately, Sydney was still struggling to recover from a concussion she had gotten earlier that summer. Details about what caused the injury remain unclear. Further complicating her plans to begin college, pandemic protocols enacted in the spring of 2020 meant that Sydney's classes would be conducted online with no in-person classroom time. This arrangement, along with her continuing recovery, quickly led her to make the decision to defer enrollment a year and begin instead the following fall in 2021. With college temporarily on hold, Sydney did not return to North Carolina, instead choosing to stay living in the Bay Area with family friends. But she did maintain close contact with her family, having a long phone conversation with her father the night before she was last seen. He later stated he expected to speak with her the following day. Unfortunately, that would never happen. The morning of September 30th, Sydney took a ride-sharing service to the area around the Golden Gate Bridge known as Crissy Field. She was known to be carrying her phone, headphones, and a backpack. It was not unusual for Sydney to go to the Golden Gate, either for exercise or to take in the amazing scenery and to take pictures for her blog. The last thing known about Sydney's whereabouts is security camera footage from the Golden Gate, which shows her entering the bridge's pedestrian walkway. But unfortunately, intense fog and an unusually high level of haze from recent wildfires made it impossible to see her for long. Investigators were unable to locate any camera footage of her exiting the bridge, although that could be explained by the lack of consistent or clear footage that morning. The Golden Gate is monitored 24/7 by an army of cameras, which tragically have recorded many desperate actions, but that was not the case with Sydney. All footage from the Golden Gate that day was reviewed by investigators and didn't show anyone jumping. The following day, her family would make multiple attempts to reach her and became concerned by the lack of a response. Soon after, they contacted local authorities and reported Sydney as missing, mentioning her personal safety may be at risk due to depression. It wasn't long before investigators located Sydney's backpack near the Golden Gate, but it contained no indication as to where she might be. Law enforcement would eventually turn the backpack over to her family. The only items that have not been recovered were Sydney's headphones and her cell phone. Sydney's family has always believed that someone on the bridge that morning, either walking, running, cycling, or driving across, must have seen their daughter. But if there are any eyewitness accounts out there, they have yet to be made public. Although from the beginning, there have been tips coming into investigators on this case, none of them have panned out. Furthermore, law enforcement has had very little to say about Sydney's case, other than they do not believe it to be foul play. There has been no activity on her social media or bank accounts or phone since that morning. So what did happen to Sydney West? Although many believe Sydney's disappearance at the Golden Gate points to only one outcome, some have suggested there were other valid reasons for her to have been there. First off, Sydney was an athlete and was also slated to be on the rowing team at UC Berkeley, so it's not unbelievable that she would go out for some exercise in the early morning. Many have pointed out the fact that her headphone and cell phone were never recovered, two items she would have had for a run, but it doesn't explain the backpack being left behind. Did she ditch it on purpose, or was it left by accident? Some have questioned why she would have brought a backpack if her intention was to jump. Questions then immediately arose about the driver of the rideshare she had taken that morning. Although there are many horrible stories about drivers crossing the line, it was not the case here. San Francisco police were able to locate, contact, and interview the driver as part of their immediate investigation, and the person was cleared as a suspect and has reportedly always been cooperative. Over the years, authorities have made changes to the Golden Gate in hopes of deterring people from using it as a dark destination. This includes safety nets and increased cameras and patrols. Although all of the current safety nets were reportedly not in place by the fall of 2020 when Sydney was there. Another point that observers of the case have made regards eyewitnesses that morning. Although the Golden Gate and San Francisco in general are a high foot and car traffic area, they weren't so much 6 months into lockdown, when most businesses and workplaces were still closed or partly shuttered, meaning far less people out on the street or exercising on the Golden Gate. So given the early morning hours, the decrease in traffic, and the fog and smoke, it's likely fewer people would have had the chance to see Sydney than under normal circumstances. But it still doesn't answer what happened to Sydney West. Did the troubled young college freshman succumb to her mental health demons? Or was she simply at the bridge that morning for some exercise, but instead ran into foul play? Although there have been no credible sightings or tips that may suggest a different outcome, some observers have speculated that she could have been kidnapped or abducted in the foggy, early morning hours. Others have suggested that Sydney may have orchestrated another gap year, or perhaps longer than a year. and simply chose to leave her life and the pressures to excel that she'd expressed feeling from her family and her impending future in college. If Sydney didn't make it across the Golden Gate that morning, it's possible no physical evidence may ever be found. And without any indication of her plans that day, or more information about her mental state being made to the public, we may never know what happened. Sydney's family continues to have an active presence online, with a website and social media accounts offering support and updates. They have also hired a private investigator to continue exploring the case. As of the making of this program, there have been no additional evidence, leads, or reported sightings made public regarding Sydney. Sydney West is 5 feet 10 inches tall, 130 pounds with light brown hair and blue eyes. She was last seen wearing dark leggings, a light teal hoodie, and Vans brand sneakers with a tropical print. It's possible she could have been wearing her hair in a bun or have been carrying a black backpack. There is currently a reward for any information which could lead to finding Sydney and bringing her back home. Her family stresses that no detail is too small, so if you remember anything from that foggy morning, please reach out to the San Francisco Police Department or contact private investigator Scott Dudek.